This is Seeking Catharsis, a podcast from the perspective of a person currently experiencing covert narcissistic abuse. Yesterday, I had to call my doctor. I had become overwhelmed with sadness. This is my last week where I am. I've been here. Tomorrow makes a year since I left my home with my husband about 7 months into my marriage. I packed up all my stuff, put most of it in storage, and took some luggage and moved across the country to a furnished rental, a very affordable furnished rental, which is why I'm here. It was what I could afford. And I just needed to get as far away from him as possible because I was suffering. I was crying every day. I was just losing my mind. This man was going to drive me crazy. And nobody understood what I was going through. Nobody had any idea what it was like to be treated like this. I'd never been treated like this in my entire life by anyone, let alone someone that was supposed to love me. I was dehumanized. I was treated like persona non grata for what? I don't know. Nothing I did would make him treat me better. It was awful. And I'm starting to get that again. I'm starting to see in this relationship, I've been a year physically removed, and I'm starting to see the lack of respect again, the lack of concern for my feelings. And I don't think I could ever get used to that. There are all these tricks to living with a narcissist and being with a narcissist, and there's gray rock, there's no contact. There are all these tactics just to survive, just to get to a point where you're not being injured. Just daily life practices. It's so exhausting. But I'm scared. I'm so scared. I'm scared of going back. I'm scared of never finding my place in life after this. I have felt disoriented since about a week, a year and a half. Since that first week of marriage, just completely disoriented, like my world is just upside down. Like I'm in upside down land. And nobody understands it in my life. I joined a support group a week into my move. I just came to realize that in the 7 months that I'd been enduring this horrific nightmare with my partner, that my network of friends and family just weren't able to wrap their heads around what I was going through in that home with him. And I could tell they didn't get it because they barely checked in on me. They knew I was going through hell. And yet they just didn't show up. It was like I had become this problem for them. Like my situation was so difficult to understand that nobody wanted to touch it. So I was glad to have found a support group for victims of betrayal trauma, which is what I had just experienced. Where most of the time your spouse or partner betrays you in a very vicious way, and you're left reeling, not just from the betrayal, but from the abuse that you're experiencing as a result of uncovering the betrayal, or as a result of setting boundaries to keep yourself safe. So I joined this support group with a bunch of beautiful survivors and victims of emotional, financial, psychological, physical abuse. And one of the things that you'd hear a lot is, if I'd had a divorce, people would know how to deal with that. Or if your spouse passed away, your friends and family would just rally around you and be there for you and cook for you and show up and just be there for you. If you had a divorce, the same thing. You'd have friends that would just be trying to get you to get your life right and move on. But no one really knows how to deal with a situation where the relationship hasn't ended, but there is abuse, and it's bad. People don't know how to respond to that. And so most people didn't respond to it. And usually their response would be, well, just get a new job. Just, move on, start dating. This was in the middle of a pandemic. This was in the beginning of the pandemic. I was in a new city where you need to drive. There were no driving lessons because it was a pandemic. I didn't know anybody, no neighbors, no friends, no acquaintances, no family. I was just stuck in a home by myself with nobody around, trying to figure out what my next steps were. How could I leave this situation for good without a job, without a place to stay that I could afford? All the while dealing with an emotional trauma that I still hadn't really allowed myself to feel. I was so afraid of leaving this job, this company where it was just the two of us, thinking how that would affect his image and how that would anger him and how that would put him in an uncomfortable financial position and cause him not to want to help me with my separation. Or it was just, I'm stuck. I still feel that way. I'm stuck. And everyone says, who cares? Let him figure it out. And I'm like, it's just not that easy. You're talking about someone whose facade is more important than real life. This is not someone who actually cares about doing good. He cares about looking like he does good, looking like he's good. He doesn't care about actually being good or behaving good, or that doesn't matter to him. So what would that do to me? if I made him look bad by leaving him in the middle of a project or 2 projects where he relies on me and my cheap labor to get work done. He would have to replace me with someone that he'd have to pay more. He wouldn't have someone like me making sure that all the pieces were put together behind him. I'd be punished for that. And I know that for sure because I was in a support group with women that were being punished, that were being tortured. Some of them were going to jail because of false accusations. Some were losing their children. Some weren't getting any support for their huge families. In many senses, I feel safer in this relationship than I feel leaving it. And that is very, very scary because I don't feel safe. But I am so afraid of leaving and what that would do to my reputation because we're in the same industry. And because he has this, before this happened, I believed it. And I lived with him for years. No one outside of our home, outside of our families, because his family knows what's up. His family knows, and unfortunately, nobody said anything to me. His family and friends know who he is and how he is. And they just enable it. They let people walk into traps for years without a word. No warning. But the people outside of this circle of family and friends, they have no idea who he is or how he is. If I hadn't caught him, I would have never known. And there are so many times that I have wished that I didn't get that pocket dial and that I just hung up and not listened. Because ignorance is bliss compared to what I'm dealing with. I can't unknow what I know about him. And that is why he's punishing me. And he can't just wish me away or make me disappear. I'm here. And because of that, I'm being punished. I'm being punished for existing and knowing who he is. That I believe. And that's why I feel like he'll never let me go. He'll keep stringing me along with a little carrot, and he'll keep giving me a little bite and then moving it. And I'll be chasing that little carrot and this hope for change and for meaningful existence with him. Meaningful relationship. And that's what I'm afraid of. That it'll never happen for me. That I won't ever snap out of it. Because I know a lot about this. I know a lot about narcissistic abuse now. Because I've read, I don't even want to say I read. I could barely read during this time. I had a lot of audiobooks. I've read about or listened to about 24 books about abuse and healing and how to move forward. I read the books, but knowing doesn't make it easier. That's what I want to express to you. When I talk about it, sometimes people will say to me, well, you know what it is and you know what